Right. There we go. We learned Lilu Nishmat Avigdor Chayavram, then Rachaleo Mer Tzvi, Shamash Devan Aliyah. I'm not going to spend more than 30 seconds on this because we already talked on Sunday night in the Tefillah class about the whole idea of and the whole idea of the miracles and miraculous time we are living in the time of Geulah. We see what's been going on. It's been absolutely unbelievable. Rav Aviner sent out a message, which I saw this morning, I think it was this morning, last night. They decide, I'm not sure how widespread this is going to be, but they will tomorrow, at least in Pnei Shmuel. Now, remember on Rosh Chodesh, which is today and tomorrow. So Ashkenazim and Sfaradim both say half Hallel, but Ashkenazim make a bracha, and Sfaradim, I don't say a bracha on Hallel. It's not whole Hallel. Tomorrow they're going to make a bracha and say whole Hallel in the shul by Pnei Shmuel. I'm not sure. He said he listed a few people are planning it, which I think was absolutely magnificent. Plus, there's going to make Kiddush and Shabbat after davening is a Hoda'at Hashem. Some of you may recall that after I forgot which war it was, or mitzvah that we had on Shabbat afternoon, we had a whole Sudash Lishit in the Kikar here. It's important. It's important not just to say how horrible things are sometimes and how bad they can be, but look at the unbelievable miracles we went through. I don't know if you know this, but the IDF estimated, they didn't say this till almost the war was over. The IDF estimated that there would be 200 dead a day. That's what they thought in the beginning. Baruch Hashem, here. Baruch Hashem, about 1% of that. Less than that, even. Tenth of a percent. So we have what to thank Hashem for, always, especially now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reread the Mishnah. This is in Perek Gimel. It may be might be Mishnah Yud Gimel 13. It might be 14, 15, 16, 17. I don't know what yours is. It starts with Rabbi Akiva Omer. Okay. And we had already done some of this, but right now we're going to do a little bit more. Yeah, it's Rabbi Akiva. It says Chok v'kalut rosh, right? Okay. Yours is in the article 17. Okay. Got it? Everyone have it? You okay? Okay, very good. Okay, Rabbi Kiva Mer, Schok v'kalut rosh, margidim le'erva. Lightheadedness or joking around too much can make a person get him used to licentiousness, lewdness, all kinds of nice terms. Masoret siag Torah. Tradition is a protective measure for Torah. Again, we have to understand what this means. Masrot siag la'osher, giving trumot, especially giving tithing, meaning giving tzedakah, is a siag, a protective measure for wealth. Nidarim siag la'prishut, making a neder and saying, I'm not going to do something that is mutar for me to do, but I'm not going to do it because I want to protect myself from doing something I shouldn't, is a siag for that. And siag chokhmah shtika. And the protective measure for wisdom is silence. So we're going to go and talk about all these again now. We talked about the general idea what a siag is. We already saw this. We came across the word the very beginning of Pirke Avot, when the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the men of the Great Assembly, said, Asu siag l'Torah. You should make protective measures for Torah. What does that mean? An example, which we talked about, is muktzah, in the fact that that as far as the Torah is concerned, I can carry a pen in my hand all day long if I want to. As far as the Chachamim said, no, we have to protect you from yourself, and therefore we come up with the concept of muktzah that you won't even be allowed to move a pen on Shabbat. Interestingly enough, in Shir HaShirim, it says the Bnei Yisrael are praised as being suga b'shoshanim. We are hedged with lilies, that there are lilies all around us. It's kind of a strange metaphor. Exactly what does that mean? Actually, so he says the praise. This is Rav Lau says this is a praise of the Jewish people because it means that the path in life is surrounded by lilies. Now, what is that? What kind of praise is that? So he's referring to the siyagim, these various measures that are enacted by the Chachamim are not barbed. He says they're not barbed wire fences. They're not scary. They're not meant to hurt you. They're meant like some fragrant, very good. I didn't even think about fragrant. Some fragrant, beautiful protective measures that are there for our benefit, not to be looked at as like, oh gosh, I can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, but rather it's some form of protection. The nimshal, of course, is that we're not there to be scared off by the protective measures that the Chachamim put in. They're there for the yofi. They're there for the beauty. Now, what does that all mean? There are, I'm sure get this that. What is it protecting us from? Well, okay, from ourselves, but really also from the Yetzer Hara, right? Because if I have a pen on me, I may decide to write with it. It's only one word after. Just remind myself to bring that book back to something. I write the word book, big deal. That's the Yetzer Hara. There's also just you're on autopilot. We don't even think. That's not the Yetzer Hara per se. It's a lack of awareness of the moment. But we have to understand that Rav Lau's point is that whatever Chachamim institute, even though sometimes they may seem burdensome, sometimes they may seem a little bit more troubling, but nevertheless, they're there for our protection, and we should look at them as something beautiful from halacha. In this Mishnah, the one we just read, Rabbi Akiva is not mechadesh. He doesn't tell us anything new. There's no new point, no new siag per se, but he's only bringing into focus things that we already are aware of, either from the Gemara, well, they'll be after him, but from other Mishnayot especially. One of the ways I also have probably said this at one point in here, 100 or 300 times. There should be like an automatic bell that if I say something that I've said before, it just should go off so I know just to stop. It's like when especially I tell stories to my kids, like every parent, like, oh, Dad, we heard that one already 100 times. Once in a while on Shabbat, I'll say something, said, whoa, that's one we never heard before. So I said, oh, yeah, sure, he's making that. No, we never heard that one before. Anyways, so the idea also, I feel, is like a person who's a recovering alcoholic, probably the worst place for that person to work is a bar. They can't say, I'll be fine. I'm surrounded by alcohol and music and dancing, and it's going to be just fine. Probably a really dumb place to work. So why? Because you know that you put yourself in a certain situation, you're going to be tempted to drink, and that's the last thing the alcoholic needs to do. What does it mean when it says that schoka kalut rosh margilin la'avera? What does that mean? Well, erva, sorry. Rashi tells us that the idea of, now there's nothing wrong with joking around. Nothing wrong at all. Nothing wrong with stand-up comedy, nothing wrong with watching a movie that's funny, nothing wrong with sitting around talking and making jokes at a table. But how the way Yetzer Hara works sometimes, very slowly, has tremendous amounts of patience, and is very sure of himself, the Yetzer Hara. And it's got to be, by the way, Yetzer Hara has to be a guy, not a girl, because he's so dumb. What does it mean the Yetzer Hara is so dumb? I forgot who it was, which because there's so many rabbanim that were in jail at different times. He said the Yetzer Hara was so dumb that even in jail the Yetzer Hara came with me. He could have stayed out of my jail cell, but he's still in there with my jail cell. Anyways. I don't make fun of all guys. So what happens is that the way that the Yetzer Hara works is first it starts with light-hearted stuff and some jokes, and then it happens is margilim, becomes hergel. What's hergel? Literally means habit, thing you get used to. Lahavdil, because it's not kosher, but we talk about the idea of putting a lobster in a pot of cold water, just slowly turning up before the lobster knows he's boiled, right? So like they get used to it. Just same thing happens with gullus. Same thing is true living in exile, living in diaspora outside. By the way, it's a big difference between exile and diaspora. People in Chutzlars hate the word exile. They prefer diaspora because it's more parv, I guess. In any case, so for those of you who are going to hear this who are in the diaspora, you're also in exile. Come home. So the idea of the more a person spends time living in Chutzlaretz, if they're born there and spend their whole life, that's all they're used to. But when they start coming to us or visiting and seeing the beauty of the country, what there is and what we have to offer, what the country has to offer, what the people have to offer, you get used to it. But then, okay, so the last pasuk in Parshat Vayishlach Miked Vayeshev, I forgot. It says Vayechazuba, that the Bnei Yisrael settled and they took hold of the land of Goshen. So it wasn't just that they were in Gullus, they weren't yet in their homeland. They're out of Canaan. But they took hold. They established, I'm making modern terms, they established the Lakewoods and the New York cities and Hashem Yerachem, New York City now, and Los Angeles and all these beacons of Torah in the United States, which are fantastic, but they're still in Chutzlaretz. And people are used to it. That's their life. So the same thing with the Yitzhar. You get used to something. I've heard from many people. I've dealt with many people going through various addiction recovery. That going from one step to another. Let's say a person's hooked on marijuana, and then they're thinking about cocaine. It's a gigantic jump. It's a huge, because a person one hit that can be completely hooked, as opposed to marijuana. That they'll kind of like dance around it for a little bit. Maybe the first time, but by the second, third time, it's already like becomes part of them. By the way, that's right out of the Gemara. The Gemara says that a person does something wrong the first time, the second time, by the third time he does it, mutar lach. It's purpose, It's right. So what it's that a chazaka is a form of doing something three times, but the Gemara says a very strange thing. This person does something wrong the third time, mutar lach. It's permissible for him. The Gemara says, mutar lach. It's permitted to him. It says no. He sees it as being permissible to him. His entire focus and perspective changes. What's so wrong with my coworker? She's married, I'm married. Okay, we'll go out one night. We'll just to relax. I'm sure our spouses will be fine with that. No problem. Okay, maybe that's perfectly innocent. Have their other coworkers around, but then things can change. Not a good idea. And very slowly, the expression in Hebrew, nofel bapach. That means you fall into the garbage. You fall into the pan. How do you say it in English? Huh? The pit. But yeah, that's better in English. It'd probably be better to say that. The Avot, who I've quoted before, he says as follows: how does it make sense? How does it make sense that a person's yirechet, a person's a God-fearing individual, could get to such a point that's so drastic? There have been, unfortunately, many stories where a person who is looked at as being a pillar of the community, a nice, a fantastic Eshes Chayil, a wonderful Rebbe, and they end up in the news for various reasons. How does that happen? Again, he says the answer is margilim. It is a person gets used to it. If I told you, let's go back to last week. Last 2 weeks, I had many phone calls and messages. Am I allowed to carry my phone on Shabbat? What happens? There's an early warning. So I belong to a couple of rabbi groups, and this whole discussion came up. First, I'll tell you the bottom line. What I tell people is, if you're going to be somewhere with a bunch of people and someone's going to have a phone, you don't have a reason. As long as one person gets the hatrah. When I went to the park this past Shabbat, first thing I did when I got there, I asked, does anyone have a phone? 3 people had a phone. I don't have to go back and get a phone. Fine, say there. If you're going to be going, someone asked me, we're going to be walking. There's absolutely not going to be anybody around. We're just going from this place to that place, and I have no idea. I said, put the phone in your pocket. You leave it on silent because it's going to override the silent anyways. But one of the discussions was, oy vey. We're going to start letting people do that, and it's going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle. People are going to carry their phones all the time on Shabbat. I didn't accept that. I mean, I didn't weigh in on that one, but I don't agree with that because I think there are, I'm not talking about, the idea of half Shabbos. You know what I'm talking about that when I say that? Half Shabbos? Okay. Let me digress. Come back to that in a minute. Half Shabbos, not half Shabbat, half Shabbos. I'll come back to that in a second. But there are certain things that a person who on a regular basis, if they're not used to it, because they just using their phone on Shabbat is not the right thing. But when they do it the first time, the second time, it doesn't mean all of a sudden they're going to get used to it. But what they're talking about in this group is exactly this. You allow, because then we didn't know how long the war was going to go, right? So it could be months. And all of a sudden, after the few months, they're used to, okay, on Shabbat, we carry our phones. Okay. That's what they were concerned with. And I understood it. I didn't weigh in, but half Shabbos is a big problem for a lot of teens, which is they can't get off their phone texting on Shabbat. They keep Shabbat. Everything, daven, eat Sudash Lishit with whatever, and making Kiddush even the Sudash Lishit, and whatever they might do, but they still have to go hide in the bathroom or in their room, and they're texting on Shabbat. There's a family I know here in the community, this goes back years already, said that they had a guest for Shabbat. See, a couple like 20-year-olds from yeshiva who were learning here, 19-year-olds, and this one kid was like, he was like in the middle of me, was in the bathroom, but what? He said, I hope you're okay. They found out after Shabbat, he kept going to the bathroom to text somebody. That's called half Shabbos. I don't know how it got that name, but you just if you Google half Shabbos plus phone or something like that, you'll see it's rampant. It's sad. So that's what the Avot is saying, is that the idea is it's margilim. It becomes second nature. It should never be second nature. What does it mean? Masoret siag Torah. Tradition is a preventative measure for Torah. So what it sounds like is, as long as you keep Torah mitzvot, you stick to tradition. I don't want to sing, don't worry, I won't sing. But everyone's got the song going to their head right now. Thank you very much. Then that's going to prevent people, are going to protect the Torah. That's way too broad. What does that even mean? So let's say, keep Torah mitzvot, and you'll be, and everything's going to get his. So Rabbeinu Yonah, remember Rabbeinu Yonah is the one who lived in time after the Rambam, and then when they burned the Rambam's books, Rabbeinu Yonah from Gironde, Italy, wrote a sefer called Sharei Tshuva. He said that when the Talmud was burned, as a result, he felt of the Rambam being burned, his Sarim being burned by Jews, and he felt the need to do tshuva. And he went from community to community to teach about what it means to do tshuva. I'm kind of taking an hour lecture and putting 30 seconds because it's not important now. But he said about this particular topic, if you've seen the inside of a Torah, and if not, you've seen a Tanakh that has it set up like a Torah, you'll notice there are a lot of interesting things that are going on without even reading the words. You'll notice there's spaces. You'll notice there are certain letters that are smaller, certain that are bigger. Certain words that are spelled one way, pronounced a different way. Certain words, certain letters, only two of them. The letter Nun, which is upside down, it's in Parshat Behalotecha. I have to tell you a funny story. Many years ago, I was reading, probably it was an art scroll book, and it was about Parshat Behalotecha, and I'm reading it fast. It's about the upside down nuns. I said, what kind of nuns are in Parshat? What are you talking about, a nun? And I literally burst out laughing. I said, that's how they spell the word nun in English. It looked like nun. But it's exactly how I read it, the upside down nuns. Yeah. Anyways, okay, let's get serious for a minute here. So you gotta have to laugh at yourself. Yeah. So you have in, and also with all the way the letters are written in the Torah, there's something that's called tagim, little crowns. They look either like a 3-part crown or a single crown. The letters shatnez getz, shin ayin tet nun zayin gimel tzadi have on top of them in the Torah a little crown. There's certain ones that have a single crown and others that don't. Rabbi Akiva, who is the author of this Mishnah, is known to have been interpret every one of those crowns, what they were telling us, because it's part of the Kabbalistic meaning behind each one, each word, each letter. And I think it's Rabbi Akiva, he's also who did on the word et and the word ra'ach and the word rak. Anyways, so we have here, I'm going to explain some of these things now, and then I'm going to come back to understanding what this means of Masoret Siag Torah. Regular black. There, because I'm not looking at the computer for a bit. If you look at the Torah, you'll see some lines stop in the middle, they finish the word, and then to the end of the line, it's blank. Others, there's a space of 8 letters or 9 letters between the last word here and the next word here. That's called Parsha Stuma, Parsha Ptucha. Parsha Ptucha means it's an open Parsha, which means that where the sofer finishes the word, the rest of the line should be blank. Parsha Stuma, closed Parsha, means you finish here, and then you count the equivalent of 9, I think it's 9 letters. 9 letters, and then you start the next word over here in the middle of the line. If that's messed up, Torah doesn't count. We think that if we miss a letter, spell or something's messed up on a letter, makes the Torah psula. Same thing is true to Chot and Stumot. They have to be a certain way. The Rambam actually has it. I think it's after Chot Sefer Torah. He has all the list of everywhere in the Torah has to be Parsha Stuma, Parsha Ptucha. Also have specifically the way the Az Yashir is written, 3 columns, Ha'azinu in 2 columns, in Tanakh Shirat Torah, but that's different. It's not a Torah. There's also what's called Ktiv and Kri. Ktiv means the way a word is written and the way it's pronounced. And we have many words like that in the Torah. One that people don't even realize that we say hundreds of times a day is a Ktiv and Kri. Hashem's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke. We don't pronounce it the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. Pronounce it Ado and Nai. That's Ktiv. It's written one way. Kri, it's written, it's pronounced another way. And there are many of those in the Torah. So let's say, for example, there's a word in the Torah that's supposed to be Yud Ke Vav Ke, Hashem's name, but the Sofer writes it Aleph Daled Nun Yud. It's the same pronunciation, but it's Kri, so the Torah Psula doesn't count. It has to be fixed. How do you erase Hashem's name? There's ways that the sofer can do that. If if a sofer writes the name Yud Ke Vav Ke, it's called Tolin Dalit. He inserts a dalit between the vav and the hey, so now it says Yehuda, and then he's allowed to take it out. Others say, depending if he made a mistake that he can't fix, he has to cut the whole piece. And there's a little patch called a matlit, sticks it behind the Torah, and then he writes on that. Malay and chaser, we have words that are spelled that are missing a letter, but it pronounces as if the letter's there. That's called chaser. There are words that are malay. It's written with the letter, but it's not pronounced. It's just there for whatever a Masoretic reason. A sofer is not allowed to write a Torah how he wants. Can't just say, it'd be cool if I can do it like this. Let's just make what? I'm going to point out all the things that God created on day one. So I'm going to make it a little column. And I'll say, Vayer Vayivoker Yom Sheni. A little column, then Vayer Vayivoker Yom Shlishi. It may look cool, but it's a puzzle Sefer Torah. It has to be done a very specific way. It also can't be done from here. The Sefer Torah cannot be written from the head. Even the person knows the entire Torah by heart. He has to look inside a book, look at the words, and copy it. That's why, for those of you who have ever had children went through a bar mitzvah, taught bar mitzvahs, you have a book called Tikkun Sofrim. It's called a Tikkun. Why? What are you correcting? Because that's how you make sure your Torah is correct. You look at this, and that's what the sofer looks at to see the words in the Torah when he's writing them. He's not allowed. Now, there are sofrim who will go to the mikvah every time they write Shem Hashem. Or the day they're going to write Shem Hashem, they go in the morning, when they're going to write God's name in the Torah, they go to the mikvah. I don't remember if that's have to or it's a custom. I just don't remember. The tagi, the crown, the ktiv and kri, the written and the pronounced words, the spaces, all that, says the Rabbeinu Yonah, is the meaning of Masoret Siag LaTorah. The Masoret, the tradition of how a Sefer Torah is written, protects the Sefer Torah. If I go to Beijing, I have no reason to go there. If I go to the Caribbean, if I go to China, I go to Shalom Nedan, New York City, wherever it might be, and I take a Sefer Torah out of the Aron Kodesh and I open it, they will all be, with some tiny exceptions, identical. What are the exceptions? Certain letters between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim changed. There are a couple others, but 99.9% the Torahs in the world are identical, at least the kosher ones. How? This. Siag, Masoret, Siag the Torah. This is what Rabbeinu Yonah tells us. Okay, let's move on. Masrot Siag Osher. Now, this may sound a little familiar for some other way. Now, I have to go back and explain that one first. The Torah tells us, Aser te aser kol tvuat zarecha. You shall surely tithe all your produce. Now, before I continue, this is a really important piece of halachic information that most people don't seem to know or they misunderstand. There is the belief that the Torah says you have to give maaser. I'm not talking about chumot and masrot on food, on vegetables and fruits that you grow. I'm talking about maaser, as they say, giving part of your money to tzedakah. But it means you have to give 10%, called tithing. To tithe means to take 10%. And that's a deoraita, in the Torah, you have to give 10%. So the answer to that is yes and no. There are three opinions. One is you have to give 10%, and it is min haTorah. The other is you give 10%. It's dirabanan, meaning it's you have to give something, and the rabbi said it has to be 10%. And the third opinion is you give what you can and want, unless you start giving 10%, and then you have to continue every year 10%. So, for example, let's say I never do a chishuv in my head. Okay, I made X amount of shekel. I have to give X amount of shekel that's stuck up for 10%. I've never done that in my life. Maybe if I get a big chunk, I'll say, okay, now I'm going to give 10%. But other than that, like my income and all, I don't do a chishuv like that. Wait a minute, you're supposed to give 10%. First of all, maybe I give more than 10%. I don't know. I don't keep track. But the majority opinion is that you give tzedakah. How much you give, that's up to you. But once you give and decide to give 10% a year, then you have a biblical obligation, at least rabbinic and possibly biblical, to continue giving 10%. So people, I get this question like, how much do I have to give to? I said it depends on what you've done in the past. I know people who have bank accounts where their paycheck goes into here and 10% automatically goes into the fund for tzedakah, and they just write checks based on that. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic. I actually know a few people like that. So as a teacher, we do the same thing. They give us our 10 shekel coin, and we give up 1 shekel. We break off 1 piece of a shekel and put that in for tzedakah. So in any case, so now it also says, what does it mean, aser to aser? You shall surely give maaser. You shall surely give tithing. You should give tzedakah. So there's a homiletical interpretation that says, aser kadesha tit asher. You should give tzedakah in order that you should get wealthy. So is that really a Jewish value? Really? That's a Jewish value. You should give tzedakah. You should feel that you get wealthy. So a long time ago, when we talked about another Mishnah in Pirke Avot, we talked about the statement that says, Ezehu ashira samech v'chelko. Who is considered rich? The one who is happy with what he has. What does it mean, aser to aser? Mean aser kadesha tit asher. You should give tzedakah, that you should be wealthy. Doesn't mean that you're going to get rich because of that. It means that when you give, you realize you're in a position to give. You feel, I'm happy with what I have. I can actually help somebody else. Nebuch, I'm sorry, that other person doesn't have. I'm able to help. So it means it gives you the feeling, the osher of the wealthy, of the feeling of you're happy with what you have. You don't have to be the recipient. You're the giver. That's fantastic. And now we come along here, and a very strange statement is masrot siag osher. The giving maser is a protective measure to become rich. It says it pretty straightforward. Most people believe that the way you accumulate wealth is to do that. Accumulate wealth, not give it away. You need to amass money, get your paycheck, and you get other income or whatever, passive or passive, or I guess active would be the other one. Income, investing, which is great. We all have to do that. You have an obligation. You have to make money somehow, whether it's going to be getting Social Security or going to a job and working or standing by the Cont with your hand out. That's also a job for some people. Shalom nida. But Rabbi Kiva tells us in this Mishnah that what will help us increase our bottom line to have more money in the bank is giving some of it away. That, he says, by giving away, we will ensure that we will be able to retain. It's a mindset. For some people, it's a very, very difficult mindset. I worked with a guy many years ago, Jewish guy, not religious, in a non-Jewish environment. The owner was Jewish and was there for many years. And he was known. He unfortunately, he fit the typical stereotypical Jew stereotype, young guy. And someone in the company died. And this one lady, this guy's name was Art, walked over to Art and says, reach in your pocket and get me one of those rusty dollars. Like, he had this reputation for being a cheapskate. So give me one of those rusty. I still hear her saying that, Juanita. So there's a pasuk not a pasuk, there's a statement in the Gemara in Masachet Ketubot, Melach Mamon Chaser. One who wants to salt or preserve his wealth needs to diminish it by giving tzedakah. It's counterintuitive. First of all, this halacha, you're not allowed to give too much. When you give tzedakah, you're not allowed to give more than 20% of your wealth. Now, that's a lot of percentage if you got a lot of money. And if a person doesn't have a lot of money, it's still a lot of money relative to what you have. If a person only has 1,000 shekel in the bank and they give away 200 shekel, that's 20%. Look at that. That's a huge percentage. By the way, the same thing is true on mitzvot. When it comes to that, you're not allowed to pay more than X amount percentage for a mitzvah. When a person charges, he's not allowed to charge more than 1/6 the going rates. He can't do price gouging. So it's its own topic, not for now. Buying a lulav and etrog. Yeah. Now, if I can spend, in theory, 75 shekel for a etrog, or I can go one of these that's like 2,000 shekel. It's nice, but the average person should not do that. I understood what you're asking, but I should have made that a little clearer. Thank you. So he says that in order to salt, what's salt's purpose? Salt is a preservative, right? It lasts forever. So you want that? You want to salt your money? You want to preserve it? You have to get rid of some of it, and that'll help keep it. I'm pretty sure, again, I told this story, but I'll tell it anyways. Dr. What was his first name? Walder. What's his first name? Not Ruvain, whatever. In Chicago, there was a guy who was extremely wealthy. He had started a business about 16 years, 10, 26, about 30 years ago, 35 years ago. He started it was a startup business in Chicago with a brand new kind of technology in medicine that had promise. It was something called DNA. He was one of the founders, the first people on Earth that really was starting to process and get into the whole concept. It's called DNA technologies. He became a multi-gazillionaire overnight. He wasn't religious. He became religious. And then in what year was it? I know it was April 15th because it was tax day, but there was the March on the Mall. We had like a million. They tried to get 1 million Jews to come to New York, to Washington. So we flew. I took a group from the shul from Chicago. We had there was a group of like 60 people. We flew. We went into Baltimore. We took a train to Washington. We went on the Mall. We came back home. While I was there, one of his employees saw me, and he came over to me and he said, because I was very public about taking people, he said, "But Dr. Walder wants to give you for your shul $5,000." For what? He said, "Well, for Jewish activism, Israel activism, Jewish activism." I said, "Wow, that's amazing." Now, it's like me giving a half a shekel to somebody, but whatever, doesn't make a difference. So we started talking. I was talking to this guy, and he said, Dr. Walder's perspective was, I have to give it away as fast as possible because I got it fast and God could take it away from me also. I need to give it away. I've told this story before for sure. And it really made an impact on me. It was such a powerful statement that by the way, we have to understand, this is something I've talked about without Dr. Walder. The money we have, we are only shomrim. We are, what's the word in English? We're like guardians of the money. Right. We're a tunnel, right? So that when someone builds something for me and I give them, a couple thousand shekel, I was holding 2,000 shekel for them. It's their money. It's been earmarked. It's been sitting in my account. Now it's theirs. So we have to have that perspective. I'm sure all of us here know, I know at least 2 or 3 people who had everything in the world and lost it all. I'm not talking about famous people, personal people I know personally. What's that? It was 2002? It could be. Could be. I know that was early in my career. That I know. Because I had a lot of energy still. I remember I made these signs that said, in red construction paper, it said Chicago. And I gave everyone who came so we could walk, because there was hundreds of thousands of people walking around. We walked around Chicago and everyone going, "Hey, Chicago Cubs." And the stocks, I walked past them. So for a giving our tzedakah, giving tzedakah is one of the ways we can ensure having more money, but that's not the reason we do it. That's important to understand. I want to read something to you. Let me get on my screen here. Here, from the Midrash Shmuel. Midrash Shmuel is written, I have it written down here, is a commentary on Pirke Avot. The man lived in the 1500s in Tzfat. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name. What's that? Midrash Shmuel, correct. I'm going to read to you what he said about this Masot Siag La'osher. Nemar B'Tilim, it says in Psalms, Hashem tzilcha yad yaminecha. Hashem is your shadow on your right side. Hainu, meaning, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mitalech im ha'adam. God, as it were, Kiviyachol, walks with man. Kiviyachol hu hatzel shelo. God is our shadow. Wherever we go, he goes. Kishem shatzel oseh kol ma shadam oseh. Just like the shadow does. I'm sure as kids you all did this. Like try to move it fast and see if the shadow takes a little longer to get there. Maybe I'm the only weird one. Just like when a person moves, whatever he does, the shadow does the same thing. Kacha kadosh baruch hu noheg im adam. So too God reflects and acts like the person for him. B'diuk kfi shehadam noheg. Just like exactly the person acts. Me'ata, now. Im yad yamino shel adam moshetet la'achim. If the person's right hand, metaphorically speaking, stretches out and gives to other people, im yado ptucha lishoel, harei shegam yad haborei moshetet elav uptucha v'akashotav. Just like we give, Hashem's shadow, as it were, gives to us. Just like we're giving, he's giving. Ulam kasher yado shel adam k'mutza. When a person's hand is stingy, when it's held back, God also will close his hand. I think it's a very nice mashal, what he said. Then, put it here because I'll get the next one up here. We'll do this one first. That one first. Okay. Nidarim siyag leprishut. That taking a vow is a form of protection when a person wants to be a poresh, when they want to protect themselves and not do something they shouldn't do, that for them is not okay. Let's say, for example, I'm trying to lose weight, start my life. And I say, you know what, I'm going to swear off cake. No more cake. That's it. Very nice. Am I allowed to eat cake? I'm allowed to eat cake. It's kosher, like a bracha, I'm allowed to eat cake unless Andy's are up. Just joking. But I don't want it. Why? Because it's going to help me make me gain weight. Now I want to get off that. I'm going to try and get away. I'm going to go off sugar. Yeah, good luck with that. I'm going to get off of sugar. I'm allowed to have sugar unless I'm God forbid diabetic, which thank God I'm not. It's mutar. But I want to separate myself from that because I want to improve my life. It's called pre-shoot. But I don't trust myself. So I take a nether. I promise that I am absolutely positively not going to have any more cake until for the next 30 days. Don't make it open-ended. Fine. First, let's understand what pre-shoot is. I'm going to read just a few lines from the Sharim, something we've done together a long time ago. It says as follows. He says, what does it mean, pre-shoot? Is what rabbis told us. Kadesh atzmecha b'mutar lecha. You should sanctify yourself with that which is permissible to you. Now, what I was giving examples, I just want to improve my health, which is good. But a person says, you know what? I think not because of health and not because of want to lose weight. I just think I shouldn't eat as much because I need less gashmias in my life, less physicality. So he wants to improve himself on a spiritual level by eating less, not for necessary physical health. So the Gemara in the Avot tells us that means to you enholy yourself by separating from things that are permissible to you. This is what the word itself means. Pre-shoot, separation. You distance yourself from a thing that he prevents himself from having, even though it's actually permissible to him. That this way, by separating himself, he doesn't come in contact with that which he is trying to protect himself from or not use. I'm not going to read the rest of this. And of course, he deals with the question like, wait a minute, the whole issue of, we have enough things that we're not supposed to do. Why do we have to add on more things and more things that we shouldn't do? Which is one of the things they say about a Nazir, that he has to bring a korban, and it's also a good thing because it's a little bit of both. If you want, just go back to the Messiah and show you and look at that. So the purpose of this neder is a person may see a character flaw. What might be the character flaw? Whatever it might be. Do you jump right away and say, I'm making a neder not to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing you could do. First of all, a person should be very careful not to make a neder. As a matter of fact, it says in Kohelet, Tov shelo tidor mishetidor velo teshalem. Better you should not make a vow than to make a vow and not pay up. It's much worse to break your vow. Now, if I tell you, I promise you, saying it's a joke, I promise you I'm going to bring to you and your husband every day for the next 2 weeks a dozen roses. Okay? That's a neder. I have to do it. Okay? Good luck, lady. I said it up front. That's a Billy neder. Okay, now, if I don't do it, I've broken red or white. Yellow. Okay, whatever you want. So if I don't do it, I've broken a neder. But if I think to myself, it's a nice thing, maybe I'll bring the Lewins because they're really nice neighbors. I have such nice neighbors in our building. Maybe I'm also going to bring to the Weisels. So I bring a couple times, 2, 3 times. I still think in my head, I'm not doing it it doesn't obligate me. Once I make a neder, I have to do it. So when a person finds that maybe they have some kind of a neder, they have some kind of a flaw or something they want to work on, whether it's something that they do they don't want to do as a habit. Maybe they have a habit. They bite their nails. I don't know, and they don't want to bite their nails anymore. So the idea being that you try. But when a person gets to a point where they just can't, handle it, then the Rabbi Akiva says you can make a neder, actual neder, and I'm adding it should always be closed ended. You could say for the week or the next 2 weeks, because otherwise you get yourself in trouble. Then it's a good idea. It protects you. The Okay, so what we're going to do is like this. The last one I want to do, and I left off with this last week just reading it, was Siyag v'chokhmah shtika. I'm going to leave you with a question, which means a protective measure for wisdom is silence. Okay, like keep your mouth quiet. So if you notice, the order of the words in this Mishnah said as follows. Okay. Masoret siyag v'torah. Tradition is a protective measure for Torah. Masrot, siyag v'osher. Masrot are a protective measure to have wealth. Nidarim, vows, are siyag for pishut. The next statement should be shtika siyag v'chokhmah. But it doesn't say that. It says siyag v'chokhmah shtika. A protective measure for wisdom is silence. Why does it change the order? We'll see next week. Bezrat Hashem. Have a good day. And so you're very welcome. My pleasure. You want yellow ones? Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm all over that.
In the 13th, it always says
yeah,
whether it's open or